Okay, we are live. Welcome, everybody. Nice to be with you all.
Welcome, everybody, to Our Bright Future. This series focuses on the positive future into which we're headed and how we're navigating these times. And we're really excited to welcome our dear friends, Evi Maes and Matthias Arentsen here today. We've been friends for a long time, in and out of different spiritual communities, and reconnected about a year and a half ago when I was struggling with some deep patterns, and Evi basically pointed me to Oracle Girls Purification Space a few times, very pointedly, and it took me about 6 months to go for that after a lot of pain. And I feel like our lives are really beautifully intertwined at this time in our history. We have so many things in common and goals and things that we want for our life on this purification journey. So welcome, Evi and Matthias.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's so beautiful to be with you guys. It was so entertaining to read your introduction, seeing that we were trying to save the world by writing blog posts.
One post at a time. I love that.
Yeah, it's amazing. I remember that time when we recommended Jacqueline to you guys, and you maybe tried it once or twice, and then it didn't hit home. And so we said, well, we really have to let go. We cannot really tell them, they have to find out for themselves. And then we were so happy after half a year, you started doing that. It was really like a high five moment for us, like, yay, because we knew it would be so good. And right now to see you guys, even having done interviews with her, I mean, we've been so happy about that, and it's so beautiful. So yeah, we feel very connected with you guys, and the feeling of bonds of connection it's not about how often you speak to each other or these kind of things, but we can really feel that it is very beautiful. So thanks again for having us.
Oh, nice. We feel the same here. As I said in that post, we've been feeling you guys for this series for a long time. And so it was really great to reconnect to do this interview. And yes, it was a gentle but encouraging nod toward the purification space. And I remember when we reconnected after, and you both said you felt like we'd changed, and that's, wow, I don't know that there's anything that's been more transformative and catalytic. Of course, it's an understatement. So that's kind of where I was going to begin with you guys, actually, with purification, which is really, I feel, the underlying influence in all of our lives right now. Can you talk to us a little bit about, you've been in the purification space longer than a lot of us. Can you talk about how you got into purification, like what that experience was like, what the early days were like for you, and maybe a little bit about, I know this is a huge question, but how your life has unfolded, what direction your life has taken as a result of that work.
Yeah, maybe we'll start with the beginning, the first early days, let's say. Well, I remember I had some physical complaints, and at one point I had a conversation with a dear friend, and he talked about Jacqueline, and he said, hey, I think she might be something for you. So that's the moment that I saw her website, and she was still doing 20-minute sessions then. So it was, I think, almost 3 years ago now. And the moment I saw her, I knew, wow, this is something special, and I really want to know more about this. And then when I had the first 20-minute session, I mean, I was so flabbergasted and overwhelmed that I said to Matthias, you need to check this too, this is something crazy. So yeah, in the beginning, I think we mostly did a few of these 20-minute sessions because we still had the idea that a one-on-one session was much more valuable, let's say, than the reboot groups. So we had no idea what it was all about. And it was interesting because Jacqueline never referred to the reboot groups. So
she did to me. She said, maybe you want to consider doing one of these in between the calls, And we didn't really get the strength of that until later, actually.
Yeah. And then we ended up in the silent immersion. And I think that's where things really took off for us because, well, my desire was to change my health. And that was one of the later stages. So for a couple of years, nothing really changed, or I didn't experience that something changed there. And so it's funny because you have this kind of idea why you want to join something. And then it turns out that this is not happening for you, but so many other things are happening. And when we look back now, I mean, it's amazing. It has been an amazing journey, a difficult journey at a lot of times as well. I mean, we want to be very honest. It's not always sunshine and laughter, and that most of the times it feels like you have these moments where you're a little bit at ease, and then you feel like, ooh, and then suddenly it's like you meet a part of yourself again, or something cracks open, and it gives you this discomfort to come from the inside out and to make new decisions in your life. So maybe you can share a bit about how you experienced, or which changes are the most relevant for you over these years.
Yeah, I think I'm starting to feel now more. I'm at the beginning of purification that I can feel. So it feels like I'm just beginning. I remember that during one of the calls, I spoke to Jacqueline, and she spoke about me having a history of being very much out of my body. And so that was a process that would take quite some time to get more and more in the body. And this is a process that feels, you can't even really, how do you say, really pinpoint it, but it's there, you know, that feeling of just being more solid. And this is something I can be really grateful of, even though it is so natural, you don't even realize or even remember that it was so different in the past, but it is. So, yeah, I mean, everything that the aftercare speaks about is still like a goal to reach, you know, because it is so much, but it is more and more embodied. So that is actually the perfect word for it, because it's becoming more solid in daily life. And especially being in a relationship has been very helpful for me on top of it, because she says that don't stress your friendships or your relationships, but we have stretched each other a lot. And we didn't have any,
and many others too.
That's true. So, but this thing to have someone that can immediately reflect on where you're being out of time, because they just can sense it, because they know when you are in and when you are out, you know. So this, if there's this immediate reflection, you can pull each other back. And I see that with when I was alone on my own, or other people that are on their own, it's a bit more difficult. They maybe have a psychiatrist or a psychologist with them, but this is much more immediate. So this has made the growth, I think, a lot quicker and deeper.
Yeah, it's interesting when you go through this process as a couple, because you cannot hide. I mean, it's there every moment that you're with each other. And we have been, I mean, since I met you, I think we have been a few days separated, but otherwise it's 24/7. So we're with each other all the time, and that amplifies the whole process. And it's wonderful to have this immediate reflection, because we had moments where we were more, you know, separate, and you feel you're on the same wavelength, and then suddenly it's like, wow, you're so stretched, and for a couple of weeks you feel like, what is going on here? And it feels like you cannot connect anymore with each other. And then afterwards, I mean, there's a huge purification, so one of the topics that comes up, and then you feel that the closeness is even more, and your bond is even stronger. So it definitely had a huge impact on our relationship, for sure, but also about financial fears, about following an inner impulse. And, you know, sometimes it's still difficult to understand if it's from your source connection or it's pattern driven. You just don't know. And when you start to think about that with your mind, like, is this a good decision? Is it not? I mean, you're already lost. So for me, the only thing I can do is follow whatever comes forward and then see what happens. And mostly, or that's what we're learning when it's source driven, it feels like it's just a step in a good direction, and you see that it unfolds in a very natural way. When it's not, then you immediately get this reflection back into your face, and you're just slapped, and you need to look at it, and you need to move on and take different decisions. So we really had over these years a couple of very, very uncomfortable moments where we really had to make decisions where we thought they were the best decisions at that time. And even now when we look back, we're like, oh, what the fuck were we doing, you know?
Well, I mean, we can relate so much to what you're talking. We're just sitting over here on the other side of the camera being like, yeah. Having someone to reflect. I mean, the past couple of weeks, I've been in a lot of purification related to a lot of financial fear, actually, and some other fear too. And and just really like feeling that and being very aware of it, and having Stephen as a reflection for me, it can be really, I like how you said it's not always roses. Like on the other side, there's a lot of clearing and deeper connection with source, and maybe like stronger connection with your inner impulses. But in that moment, it can be really challenging, which I think is, there's, you know, so many people in the purification space in our audience that can relate to that. So
yeah, the relationship piece is pretty amazing. I was sitting here thinking, like, I wonder how many couples there are who are both in the purification space, who are both like you guys, like us. We're really, you know, out there building something and creating things, and we're going to obviously talk to you about what you're doing, but then wrap around that what's happening in the world, and it's just like this. It's kind of, there's like fires every day. You know, there's so much kindling, and there's so much heat surrounding what we're doing. There are often things every day, but I think you really said something true, which is there's this kind of feeling of being pulled apart and into my own process, let's say it. But then when we come back together, it's really much deeper. And we've had that experience. There's kind of bigger periods of that. And then there's like the daily kind of like the kind of back and forth. But the bigger stuff has been kind of momentous, I think, for us. I mean, like, I have been so challenged by finances and worry about money, et cetera. And this is like lineage stuff that goes way back. I think most people have that. But the shift in that way, it's not completely done or purified, but it's still there. But there's a noticeable difference. It's a very palpable, clear, noticeable difference. And also just our kind of, I think, you know, the early days of a relationship are kind of like, those are sort of like the honeymoon period. And then stuff gets real and things really start to come out. The intimacy really wants to develop and more patterns are revealed. But like Teresa and I have challenges all the time. But yet I don't think I've ever felt this close at the same time, if that makes any sense. I mean, it's sort of, it goes against the picture of a relationship that you have when you start. But when you're in it, it's like, this is what it's about. And the gratitude we have for the purification space, for Jacqueline, for the community, for you guys, for this whole kind of world we're in is boundless. You can't quantify that. It all kind of fits together somehow.
Yeah, I love how you guys talked about how you don't really know what it's going to be about when you enter the purification space. Like we were in,
yeah.
And this is why you had recommended it at the time. I remember, I mean, we were into some really ancient patterns, Stephen and I, and it was just like, and with our daughter especially. And I remember like, I popped in a little bit, and then, but the silent immersion, that one in April 2020, like I remember being like waking up at 4 a.m. in the morning and be like, oh, I didn't sign up. And I think I might've texted you and someone, can I still sign up for the silent immersion? I was like so panicked. And that, it just completely transformed me, really. Was a catalyst to so much change. And it's an amazing process. So.
When
you want to comment on that? Feel free.
Yes, I would love to. While you were speaking, there were a few things that came with me, and to give you an answer, what we learned, three things came up, and one is that we keep going always. You just keep going, whatever happens, and so there's this kind of strength which is building up. And the second thing is like it's like a muscle you're training. So you feel, or I feel within myself, that more and more there's something which is more solid inside, and then it's more easy to navigate the outside. And then the last thing is that we see that whatever we need to face in our outer reality becomes, well, one might say worse and worse and worse, but at the same time, you have the ability to deal better. Well, how the word better is not in its place, but in a different way with it, with more, let's say, overview for all parties involved, but also respect for all parties involved. it's not always that everyone can see that, but I mean, it's beautiful to see that change and to see you're capable of dealing with bigger things, especially when you know what is coming in the upcoming time. It gives you this kind of bandwidth and more trust in yourself that, you know, hey, I can do this. And then it doesn't matter what comes, you know, there's something inside of you which will take you through, and you follow that all the time.
Yeah, that's very clear. It's very clear. It resonates for me.
Yeah. Well, to kind of move into your experiences now, I think I'd like to just start with a title that you've kind of given to your business ventures called In Line with Nature, which is a thing I think people talk about a lot in our world. But I would love to hear you specifically describe to yourselves, what does that mean, and what is the aim of your business? What is it seeking to create and develop, and why name it that?
It's a good question. You remember how it started?
Yeah, well, we started with a different name actually. So the nonprofit had a different name, and it was more called like the bedding, like a riverbed, or like something that people could really land and be. And so this was the vision we had for the place we have, for the house. But then also it's a Dutch name, and in English it doesn't really translate that much. And we also saw that there's a big network that we have internationally that we couldn't ignore. So yeah, why did it happen? Why did it change? And what does it mean?
Well, I remember, it started just with a few seeds in the ground. So out of nothing, just waking up and knowing, okay, I have to plant something, and seeing where that led to. And then at one point there came this feeling of creating more than that, like a nonprofit organization. So we jumped on that pathway, and we did that. And I remember at one point that Jacqueline wanted to give us a gift for the organization, and she wrote a little text on our website, and she wrote like, contributing to a new society through economy through action in line with nature. And when we saw that text, it was like, wow, this is big. Through action in line with nature. Whoa. But we had no idea what that would mean, right? It's just, but you can feel some kind of energy or frequency behind it, which lit both of us up. It opened something inside of us. And she said, through action in line with nature. And at that moment, I think a couple of days later, we just changed the name of the organization to In Line with Nature. It was so clear in that very moment that that was what the name was.
And we're still figuring out what it means. So.
Fair enough.
We had a section with principles of nature on the website, and then we look back and we say like, and then we heard Jacqueline speak about that it can be put into like concepts or things or ideas or even principles. So we took it. Did we take it off?
No, it's still beautiful though. I still like it. And I mean, it's not about what Jacqueline says. It's about how we experience it and how we feel we want to share with other people what we experience in our daily lives, and how our pathway is unfolding. So, I mean, for me, there are lots of principles in nature, but what do you experience when you look around in your own life? For me, well, nature is free. There's nothing in between. And it's very direct and raw, and it doesn't hide. When you see something, it's just there. So, and if you just take all these kind of things and then you want to translate it into projects or your business, I mean, that's a lot, and into your own behavior. And we see that, we make so many mistakes. Sometimes we look at our own behavior and we're ashamed, or we're like, what the fuck was that? What was happening there? Or sometimes it feels like the worst of you is coming out and you don't want to be like that, but it's still happening. And then you wonder, is it a pattern that comes up? Oh, well, is it my family thing that is still there? And it doesn't matter. So, and that's the beauty in being together as well, that the other one can say, hey, it's okay. I understand what is going on now, and it will change. Don't worry too much about it. So this is this, reflection that you have. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit off topic now, I feel.
Well, it relates to what you said about purification. What do we understand by purification? I mean, the idea of being pure or doing pure things is very much very spiritual, religious, which is very different than just being the pure you, which we actually don't remember so much. But if it's coming out more and more, so it naturally becomes more and more pure what you do. So that is something you don't even have to worry about so much. And that's what gives it a lightness, that we just act, and we can even be sometimes nasty, or it doesn't matter, because you keep going and you move and you adjust, and over time it's different. And patterns can take a while for it to maybe become less and less, and then they become bigger again. But overall, like you said, Stephen, I love the way you described it. You feel overall just a more of a solidity, and something that is just tangible, and it's just there.
Yeah. Maybe two of the main principles that we use in the organization is one that came out of direct experience when I was growing rocket salad, this one seed, and then it turned out to be seeding because it was not good anymore. It was too hot, so it was not edible anymore. And then it turned into 1,000 of seeds. I really counted them. There were so many that I wanted to know, what is this? It's from one you create 1,000, and then there's this huge abundance. And you start to look around and you see that flowers have many seeds, other vegetables create many seeds. So this is the natural abundance of nature. What is going on in our economy? It's not right what is happening there. Why are people still hungry? Why is everything so controlled? And it brings you back to the structure, or make you look at the structure there is right now. And then inside out, you feel that there's something else. So there's a deep resonance within me that knows, hey, there's a different way of interacting and to live together or to do business together. So that's one of the main things. And another one was like being fluid, like nature too. What I saw was sometimes there's a disease with plants, or sometimes, the weather are bad circumstance. Well, bad, I mean, it is what it is. And if you start to, how do you say this in English?
Manicure it.
Yeah, or to force it, or to reject it, or whatever. It cannot go its own way, because you try to put it in another little basket and it's just not working. But when you're in this fluidity and you're open to just react in every moment to something that comes on your path, and then choose yes or no, and then maybe you see after a couple of weeks, oh damn, I should have said no at that point, or I should have said this at that time. But you can always course correct. So it's just in every moment then that you make a new decision, and then you also see that your life is changing out of that. So for us, nature has so many beautiful insights and principles which we can then transform in something new, which we all desire.
And even losing your crop of tomatoes can teach you something about not even to do it differently next time, but also about its nature. It's what it does. So when there's too much rain, this can happen. And is it part of a natural process? So it's very beautiful. You learn through the results of what you see.
Yeah, I feel like it's so beautiful how you guys are speaking about this. And I feel like that kind of pure action, it's like the impulses you were talking about before, that when you get into the purification journey, you start to respond from impulses rather than, whatever, mind control and whatnot. Like when we were joking before about how we were trying to save the world one post at a time, I was thinking about how forced that used to be for me. I was trying so hard to convey something. And I remember, Evi, when I saw your post on Facebook about planting the seeds, it was so authentic. It was just, your joy was like radiating through the page. There was nothing forced about it. And I wonder if you can talk sort of along the lines of what you're saying, just about that experience of following that impulse, and kind of like, where did that take you? How did you find yourself interacting with the local community? What did you learn from that?
When I feel what you describe as a natural impulse, it's very joyful, and there's no doubt. So there's something, I feel like a little child again. It's like this little girl, and suddenly it's like, wow. And then you feel you want to act on that because it's so beautiful, and it opens up so many perspectives, which with your mind are just not possible. And actually, this is what I experienced many times as a child. It's like you see that your outer world is reacting in many different ways. And so there's until now not so much room for this natural thing to come out and then to be shared or to be shown, because a lot of times you get this kind of pushback from people around you or structures around you which say, oh, this is not possible. Or, the parent that says to you, oh, no, not dreaming, keep your feet on the ground. And I remember even when I was a little girl, I had the same, but then I always knew it is possible. And at one point, my mother even said, oh, stop building land castles. I mean, you're not buying anything with your dreams. And I was a little bit disappointed. And over the years, the dreams just fade and it's back. So it's kind of being in a purification space, switched that part of me on again. But now it's like, okay, I'm an adult woman now. And now I sometimes have for other people these crazy ideas that come up and what to do with that. So, or you just follow them and you see what happens. Like that's what we did right now. And I'm so happy to have this husband next to me who knows me a little bit and who's very supportive. And I mean, more and more we can find each other on that level as well.
Yeah, I don't always feel the excitement, but I know inside myself, this is a good idea. So I feel this solidity within myself, like changing. Well, there's first a little surprise and like really like changing the front yard as well into a vegetable garden. Are you crazy? Okay, let's put our last money into it. I know this is good. I just know. And the same here in this house, we created a garden with vegetables that seemed very large and a lot of work, but I just felt, okay, even if we need to do it alone, we'll do it. Huh? Mm-hmm. And then you found this amazing compost, and it was even more joy to put that on the ground. And we know this is something that will benefit the next people that are going to live here. And it's beautiful. It has served its purpose. And now we see that if we didn't do it or kept ourselves small, it would have been just a different experience. And it's been perfect.
Yeah, especially in the beginning, it starts with a few seeds and then suddenly you have 150 pots. And then it's like, oh, let's get a few of these vegetable wooden, how do you call them, to put in the garden. And then it's like, oh, but that's only for us. I don't want to do only things for us. What about for other people as well? It's like, oh, and then I saw these little stones lying on the porch and like, Matthias, can we? And he's like, oh no.
I already knew.
There she goes again. I was like, oh, come on, it would be so nice. And then we had this little seed library. I mean, and in the end, it was not so much at all, but it brought us this beautiful experience of, we were living in the old house for a year of my grandparents. And it was back, I don't know, a neighborhood where it was not in the city. It was a little bit more on the countryside, and people were just passing by for their walks, in the weekend. And there was a little forest. So there were different people passing our house. And I saw that they stopped and they were going to the seed library and they were reading what was on it and then opening it and looking a little bit inside and quite very curious. And some of them saw me working in the garden. So it was really this kind of interaction of being present in that garden that made people stop and then have a little chat with me. And then they asked me questions like I was an experienced gardener and I didn't know anything at all. I was just doing something. But people came to share their seeds. Some man brought us cherries. There was a very lovely older couple in their 80s. It was amazing. And we gave them some berries because hers were not growing. And they invited us at their place to go for a drink. And we ended up for an afternoon spending some time with them. The drink became a cup of tea because we don't drink alcohol. But they really prepared to invite us there and to have us there. And we had wonderful conversations about Africa. He was born in Africa, in Congo, about all the colonialism, and it was a purification by itself. So you're brought to different places where you're like, oh, this is interesting. I didn't see that one coming. And it all started just with this inner thing like, oh, now I do this and now I do that. And you're not busy with the money or how much it costs or how it will look like in the future. There's no goal. There's not really a schedule or a business plan. You don't know if it will bring you any financial profits, but you just know this is what I need to do now. And when we see how it was beautiful, what we were able to experience there and how we ended up. Yes. Yeah. The house was sold. Very nice people came to live there. And then we moved on to this one, to the community home. So yeah.
Yeah, there's so many things I want to ask you now. Did you want to jump in? Or?
Well, it feels like there's so knowing you guys and having a little sense of your story, you're talking a lot about gardens and food and whatnot. I think a lot of people feel this urgent call, let's say, to plant food, plant seeds, and really get very close to your food source. Evie, it sounded to me like some time ago, maybe last spring, a year and a half ago or so, you had a very clear call, kind of out of nowhere, to start planting seeds. And then if I'm looking at the timeline correctly, sometime later we spoke to Jacqueline. I think it was after that. And the very last thing we asked her was, is there anything else you want to say? And she said, buy seeds.
Yeah.
I know.
So tell us about that, and kind of like what happened for you in that moment. Was it totally by surprise? Because it sounded to me like you haven't really done anything quite like that before. Is that true?
Yeah, it's true. Nothing. Maybe as a child to help my mother weeding a little bit in the garden and giving the little worms to the chicken. Yeah, and really never. I had no interest in food at all. Before we were, in these spiritual communities more and trying to save the world or being a coach or whatever. And then we were involved in a beautiful organization where we learned about how the future could look like. And I think that inspired us a lot. So it changed your perspective on life, and it changes you so much that you cannot go back anymore. And you feel you want to move forward in the same direction, let's say, of well, not being the same, but kind of using whatever you experience to create your own future. And I mean, I said to Matthias, if I can grow, anyone can grow. It's not so difficult.
Very inspiring.
and it isn't. It's just about putting seeds in the ground, and nature just shows you what is possible. And we learned that, okay, you need to have a little bit soil with a little bit of food in it, so that the food can grow. So it needs some compost or whatever. But I don't know, when we look now at techniques like syntropic farming, for us also it's changing. So it's kind of, there are so many techniques out there like permaculture and syntropic farming and food forestry, and then you can have aquaponics, and I'm not really such a good student. I never was.
You just try, you just begin and try. I have a temptation inside to research and do things very structured, but I let go because it's not even fun, and I don't feel it's a goal to become an organic farmer. But this thing, we were not even focused on doing anything with the garden. It didn't even come into our mind, even though we knew we could be there for a year. We just I don't know, we just put normal plants in there. We didn't even think about food. But now it's so linked, even though it's not our main goal with the garden, but it's just part of it, huh?
Yeah, but I mean, when people are a little bit scared, like, how do I do that? Even when I have a small apartment or I don't have a big garden, how do I grow my own food? And of course, there are things out there which are very easy to do yourself in a very short term of time, let's say. But further, when you have, I would advise anyone to buy a lot of seeds. And if you buy seeds which you can regrow, then you can just harvest your own seeds. And when you put a lot in the ground, because not every seed is sprouting, that's a lot of them are actually, which is beautiful to see, even in difficult circumstances when the weather is a little bit okay and they have enough of light. But further, when you put them in the soil directly outside, well, I have put 25 or 30 fennels in the soil and maybe 5 came out. So it's good to know that you need to plant more than what you count on, and water them when you feel like it. And these are the basic main principles, let's say. And further, just follow your natural feeling and impulse and see how it develops.
And these techniques that we're really excited about, they just come naturally also towards us. And we feel like, oh, maybe we can do this or that. But we're not following the instructions of YouTube videos, because then you need to cut every leaf in half and you need to do this and that and that.
But it's beautiful what you say there, Matthias. Like, being in the moment and seeing what you need and then take action. Again, it's the same thing also with the vegetable growing. And maybe then you need to know something about tomatoes and then look just up for the tomatoes and you will find something which shows you the information you need in that very moment. And then maybe after a while, you're like, oh, fuck all these kind of structures. I want to be creative. And you just put in a bed, all the seeds, together and you see how it grows. And so it's kind of this combination of being creative. It reminds me of this Japanese guy who created this seed bombs, and he was just throwing them, and kind of it's so beautiful. It's so easy when you have so many courses and you need to know all these principles, and it's so, for me, it's sometimes tiring. So tiring. Yes, because then you need to study for first 1, 2, 3 years, and then you're qualified enough to grow your own vegetables in the way they prescribe. I think there's much more possible. I really have a strong feeling that when we look more at nature, there must be ways which are so much more easy on a long term as well. Because now, what are we doing? Every year, again, we put seeds in the ground, we harvest them after a couple of months, we eat them, and then you need to do it all over again and again and again. I mean, there are vegetables which regrow, or there are roots you can just take out of the ground and eat. So I have this excitement of making it much more easy for all of us. Even things which you think that are not edible, but you still can eat. So there's so much more to discover.
And we noticed everyone going to the garden is getting their own salad, combining it from the plants. It's such a lovely experience as well. So that part I very love, and we've lost that a little bit. So I'm over the year, I'm learning that you have it more naturally from the inside. I need to experience it first and then start to appreciate and love it, and then think, oh, this suits me actually.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I just love the way you're talking about your experience of it, because I feel how many of us, have wanted to grow our own food and just got completely stuck by thinking, I need to know blah, blah, blah. I know for me, I'm like, oh, I can't watch all those YouTube videos. I don't have time, or, whatever. And then instead you're talking about just taking a step from a natural impulse and then like letting nature show you the way, which I think is really incredible. And it's kind of reminding me of, there's a lot of people in our community who are kind of taking leaps based on impulses right now, and it's just such a different way of living life, is to just be responding to those impulses that are so natural and letting that show you the way. I'm curious about, okay, so in line with nature the line was creating a new economy with actions in line with nature. Is that what it was? Through
contributing to a new economy through action in line with nature. Yes.
So tell us a little bit about your experiences with creating a new economy, because I feel like you guys have been very focused in this area on where our economy is headed and ways that you can take action very deliberately and in line with nature in your own life through the businesses you run, the decisions you've made along the way, the local community garden you had. Tell us a little bit about that. What are your experiences creating a new economy?
Maybe we can share a bit about working by donation and appreciation base, because this is definitely a part of it. We lived without a house for 2 years. The moment I met Matthias, I was living in a small house, but the costs were quite high. And I had my 2 children. I was a single mother. And you came from traveling, so there was not really a budget to pay a lot of costs, and it was just too high. So we decided to leave it. And suddenly we were just traveling around with our car with a few boxes in the trunk, so and it was quite an adventure, because we had almost no money, and then we were living with friends, and then it turned out that we created a website, for example, in exchange for a stay, or we were able to stay with family, and then we were doing some cooking or cleaning in return. So there was always a natural exchange occurring. And so it also changes your perspective. Like, you come out of a situation which is fear-based, like, I literally, when an invoice came into my mailbox, I was in such a panic and fear. Really, you were much better in this. But for me, it was like, I cannot be able to afford it and to pay it, So it was like my body froze every time I just got a letter or I needed to pay something. And it really helped me to understand that you're always okay, and that there's always something which makes when you share something out of your gift. And sometimes it meant to clean a kitchen or a house, or I mean the task, it was not always fancy pantsy like you're giving coaching sessions, or no, sometimes it was just the dirty kitchen that needed some cleaning. So, or working in someone's garden, or but it's beautiful because then you see everyone has something to offer always. It doesn't matter, don't need to have a degree or a specific kind of skill, or but there's always something that someone needs which you can offer in return for something else. And that changed so much in us, right? It made us really more relaxed. At one point there was one breaking point when we went to Ibiza. Do you remember that? we hadn't been on a holiday for a very long time, and we found this very cheap house and a very cheap flight ticket. So we went there, and we came there, and then there was something wrong with our credit card, because we had a credit card, but it was actually from Bank, which is a Dutch bank, and it was not a credit, but a debit credit card. And the car rental company didn't want to give us our car because of that. And then we needed to pay a fine of 250 euros. I mean, when you have not much, it's like, ooh! And then there was something, normally I had a tax refund, and that's why we decided to give us this little gift of going to Ibiza for a while. And then I got the news that they were not paying the tax refund because there was something wrong and blah, blah, blah. And then we received another call, and were costs about 4,000 euros. And then I completely freaked out because it was so much money, and it just, I think in 1 or 2 days, it was like bombarding us. And I remember I even called my dad. So it was like, it's this pattern that comes back like, oh, Daddy, please save me. And he just said to me, do you really think I'm going to help you? And I was like, yeah. I said, no, I will not. I mean, it's your responsibility. You need to take care of it. And I hang up the telephone. And in that moment, I really realized, like, what am I doing? This is because normally I never call my dad to ask him anything because I always wanted to be independent, but now it was like too much. And I felt like this is not how I want to do it anymore. I want to do it in a different way. And that's when the decision came with very practical solutions. And it's like suddenly we had a few new website projects, people that rang us, and it turned out to be the most busy time we had ever, working all day instead of enjoying a holiday. We were working. But something shifted, and we knew if we can deal with these kind of financial things, we can deal with everything. It doesn't matter what comes. You always find a solution. It's always there, even when you don't believe it's there. And we also learned that through conversation with other people, there's always something possible. And even now, maybe it's even a beautiful example to share this with you guys. It just happened recently because now we're in our community home and we're living here because we're heading to Spain for a new project. And normally when legally, when you follow the structure of a contract, we should have to pay huge fines. I mean, huge. So it's not that a contract is supportive for all parties. Most of the times it's supporting one party more than another one. And I know that the owner really liked us. We were always very friendly and we always had an open conversation, and she's really business minded. So she's very, strict and sometimes very emotional. So when we said to her we were going to leave, she completely freaked out. Like, whoa! And she started to speak about lawyers and having to change the garden again to grass. And our heart was bleeding like, what, really? I mean, such a beautiful garden, because we have a large vegetable garden here now on the property. And then we found someone else who wanted to form a new community here, and they wanted to take over the garden. And there were people with knowledge of permaculture, so we could give her the new renters. And so slowly it was settling down a little bit. And then we got to news. Suddenly she said, oh, I will keep your 3 months of deposit, which is a huge amount because it's a big house. I will not pay this back, and I still want this and this and this more. And again, it was like, okay, we have two options, or we completely freak out now, like what we would used to do. but we cannot do that anymore. There's still, I mean, we have to be very honest. There's still this emotional kind of reaction in the moments, because when something like that happens, it's like, whoa. But after a few minutes, it's gone. And then you can switch again and then decide to do it different. And what we saw is, I mean, today I had a final conversation with her, and it started with threatening of her lawyer, that we, from now on, we needed to connect with her lawyer. And I really said to her, do you really want to do this after this beautiful bond that we had? And do you want to live with the knowing that you take us to court and you know that we don't have much money? I mean, and that what we have, we use for the organization. And it was very strange, but suddenly something shifted inside of her. So through this open conversation, I was a little bit emotional, but not like emotion in a bad way, but really deeply touched. So I needed to cry a little bit, but I looked at her like there was this kind of recognition between us. And I really could honor her for who she is and that she works so much. And she felt seen as well. And then we had a deal. We still lose the warranty, which is a lot of money. And suddenly for me, it shifted, and it was not about the money anymore, but it was about what happens in between us in that very moment of the conversation. And she expressed that normally she would just let the person deal with her lawyer, because she has a building construction firm. She deals with a lot of holiday homes, a lot of damage, a lot of people. And normally it's always like, okay, speak to my lawyer, that's it. And she said, I'm not doing it this time because it's you. So for her, the step she took was huge, because she's so used to abuse, and she's been abused so many times, of fines that she had to pay. And I mean, she had a very rough time, and she still has. But in that one decision to do it differently and to sort out an arrangement in between two people, it completely shifted her reality as well. I could feel it, that, you know, she was ready for something else. And then the money for me becomes irrelevant. So, I mean, we still, from the mind, you still lose a lot of money budget we could use for something else and to support other projects. But it was priceless what happened there in that moment.
And then you know that it will come from in another way, because it's coming, it's all connected, and you give in one way and you receive, but as long as it feels right, and it feels, I remember we were in the process of writing her an email with all of these steps and thinking, how are we going to do this? And you said, I'm fed up with this. I'm going to go in the garden and do something else. And that's where you met her, where she was.
That's where I met
so yeah.
So she was in the garden? You were about to email, she was in the garden?
She was at the
they are working here, her working man. So she came to check what they were doing, and yeah.
Oh, nice.
You cannot even imagine that happening. It's all like, you look at it, it's like, wow. And she came back and said, look, listen what happened. And then all these things happen, and it feels like it's a different reality that you're in. And I can immediately feel that, yeah, this is right. This is, and it made us very happy today. Huh?
Yeah, and all this brings us back to, from this point of view, you don't want to be part of the normal structure anymore. And that's where I see being part of a new economy through working by donation, that, well, the interaction between two human beings is the most important. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the patterns are very, very strong. And even, you know, in my own system, I had situations where it was so strong for me that I was not able to resolve it, or even to keep that connection with someone, because it was already far out. And sometimes it is possible, but then I can see, oh, when it's too far out, it's kind of my, not really fault, but it's something that I was part of, because I didn't act in the first place in the beginning when I felt something was off. But you let it come to a certain kind of point where you're already over the edge. And from this interaction with people, I mean, you can work by donation, you can exchange, you can do some crypto or gifts, or, I mean, it doesn't matter, but something else is important. And that's how we live now. We do everything by donation for ourselves, the websites we create, or the I mean, we do other technical things as well, but also like the vegetables in the garden, when we had more abundance, we gave it to the neighbors, and they knew people here in the area who had a little bit less money, so they could then give it to them. Or when people came here on the property, we gave them vegetables, like the working guys. He was so happy. I gave him a big kind of basket, you know. And also the organization, we're running completely on donation base. So that's even a step further, which is, to be honest, not always easy. But I'm sure you guys know about this too. Huh?
So are you guys purely by donation at this point? There's no,
Yes.
yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I
No,
love how you describe it as
you have one. Matthias has one little assignment, but
I introduced it here, so I have part of it, and I'm in a cooperation with someone else, so we kind of have to feel both that it's right. And for the main project, we didn't feel it, but for the next one, he felt like, okay, this is the amount of hours they can pay. And then I said, what if we of course, this is what we can do. We cannot completely complete the process like we actually would be proud of it. We would need more hours, but he said, I cannot pay more. So I introduced the last section of hours to finish it up, to do it on donation base. But the first thing he said, this is only for rich people. And I thought, what do you mean? Yeah, because
it's a normal company they're working with. Yeah. So they're still in
they're
a
not
very
even used
system.
Yeah. And he said, yeah, because if you tell me you work like so many hours extra on the project and I don't have the money, I would feel guilty, and I cannot pay it because actually I can only appreciate it. And so he was still coming from the old point of view of having to pay those hours with the same amount of money. So then I introduced, and I said also, no, it's completely different. You can also appreciate it in the future or somewhere else, or maybe we can make an agreement that feels good for both of us for something that you can offer and that does work. And it's really beautiful. I mean, it's very lovely to step behind those business kind of walls and really approach someone as a person and really talk to them from a place of warmth. And you see people appreciate that and like that, and they love to work in that way, even if the appreciation base is a bit too much. But there's many ways that you can just introduce it in ways, even for people that have shops, they cannot always do it on appreciation base because they have to pay their suppliers, but they can do something little that is on appreciation base, but that is on the side, and that gives them the opportunity to work in that way. So people can even give to a good cause and you know, do it in that way.
More and more people are asking us very direct questions about the practicality to work by donation. And it's beautiful to, well, it really depends on your personal situation. For example, someone who was a coach, but she had some kind of public already or clientele, and they needed boundaries and they needed structure. So she said, I cannot just do it by donation because they will completely freak out, because they have like emotional problems. And then when you're in such a situation, it's very difficult to decide which amount you want to give. And even by working by donation, she said that it could have an effect on the safety of the field which she was providing for her people. So I suggested, like, okay, what is behind your desire to work by donation? And then she came to a very exciting point where she was like, I want to share more, you know, for good causes. And then I want to give this money to it. And I said, well, what you could do is keep working as you do right now, but just put a little box on your desk, and then when people pay you, you can say, if you want to give something extra, a beautiful gift or a donation, this will go to this good cause. And then you have, you know, the kind of answer to her desire, but also the very safe context what her clients need from her. So I think I would never advise someone to just jump into working completely by donation. It happens with us over years. So there were so many moments where I remember we did the website business on donation. And the first time I just offered that, the client just wanted to give me, I think, 200 euros or so. And I was like, wow, that's not so much in my system. But my mind was like, I cannot ask more, because I said she could give whatever she wanted because it's on donation. And then I said to Matthias, but this doesn't feel good. So I realized that just by honoring yourself, you have the possibility to say no, because working by appreciation, it comes from both sides. And at that moment, I got back to her. It felt a bit awkward to do that, but I did. And then in the end, we arranged a beautiful amount, which felt beautiful for all of us. And we had kind of a payment plan, and that felt much more worthy, and for her as well, because then she had a term to pay, and her business had time to grow. So it's more like, how can you be transparent with one another? In which individual situation are you both in? What do you need? And from that, I mean, if the excitement for the project and to co-create together is there anyways, you can always find an arrangement which suits both parties. It's always possible.
You are quite good at it as well. It comes very natural for you.
I like to do it more and more, yes. But then we have, of course, the organization, and that's another kind of, it's always a self-reflection as well, because what you send out gives you information about how you feel. And I remember creating our apps, for example. We have Food Wallet and Skill Swap. The Food Wallet is to exchange food, and Skill Swap is to exchange your gifts with one another. And we felt we wanted to create it, but not kind of be on it all the time and market it. But then it means that people need to take the action and feed it in some kind of way by using it. And when there's not enough volume, it's just not working. So I remember I was so excited to launch it. I mean, we had such creative sessions together, and even the name Food Wallet, we were like giggling, like, oh, Food Wallet, it sounds so good.
It's still good.
It's still good. And then we send it out, and then it's like you already expect something in return, that people will kind of download it or give a little donation for it. And then you're looking at yourself like, what am I doing? I'm having expectations here. Why? What is happening? And you see, it's so easy to step into what we're used to in this structure, like I give something and I now expect something in return. So always asking yourself, like, or maybe not even asking, but knowing, hey, where is this coming from? And then being very honest with yourself and knowing, like, oh, fuck, there's still something where I can look at it. It's a beautiful process.
And also the question, do we want to do more marketing? Which was quite clear. Huh?
No,
no, we don't want to do that.
Same here.
But what I did find out, and it was beautiful, our dear friend Elira came here to visit us for a couple of days. And I had a wonderful talk with her. I really like her so much, or I even love her so much. And she pointed me to my human design, and she said, you're a fire starter. You can do hundreds of projects. You're here to create new projects, but then you need to hand them over to someone else who can then nurture them and then do the marketing. And then suddenly it clicked within me, like, oh, so I just need people to work with who can do this part for us, so we can then create on something else that wants to develop. So you don't have to do everything yourself either.
It's so wonderful, like just the living by appreciation principle. It's so in line with what we've been talking about being in line with nature, because it's like about that bond of affection, and that becomes the currency. It feels like it's not the thing or the amount of hours worked, but it becomes that exchange is in the bond of affection, which is it's so beautiful. And I remember and Matthias helped us with the development of the Ownstream Network. We were in this amazing co-creative group earlier this year, and talking about how we might merge our efforts, and had so many common interests. And I remember, Evi, you asking me so many really powerful questions that are just about working in a new way, which is like, does this give me energy? Do I feel alive when I do this? And about so many different tasks. And even just those questions to ask myself, because there's certain aspects of running the network that are a dream come true for me. And then it was like, there's certain things that just feel like this grind, like, oh, we hired someone who's a dear friend to help with a lot of the administrative stuff. And it was like, whew, okay, I feel flow now. This feels like plus it felt great to have her part of the network and working on it, having her energy in it. So it's like really, when you follow that, it feels like it's so natural, and there's like, you're all expanded by it, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah. I wanted to ask about the apps actually. So I remember, tell us about your experience, because I think they're so cool. I'm so into them, but I know it seems like you were telling me the other day, I feel like you guys are really like forward thinking or forward feeling with these, because maybe it's that people are not ready yet or don't need it yet, right? Tell us a little bit about, because I think those two initiatives are so cool and are going to be so useful to us.
You want to share something?
Yes, well, even lately we've been, the more we listen to Jacqueline, we are reminded like, okay, this is really going to be important. And we're reminded back in the days that when we created it, we had that feeling as well. But then in the meantime, we can still go to the grocery store. So that's what we do ourselves often as well. And sometimes there is produce in the garden, and it's just there, you know. And so the immediate need is probably going to spike this, you know, the use of apps like these, because it goes back to a different way that we're not so much used to anymore. But we had a very strong feeling that this is going to be needed. And I think we were a bit early, huh?
Well, it's there now.
It's there. It's just, yeah. And I feel that, I think we've spoken about it a lot, huh? And yeah, we're pretty sure that, I mean, if it's there, if when the community needs it, so then we let go also again of, we feel this impulse like we spoke about before, and then we do it. And of course, often we speak about it. Can we still improve it? Do we need to do something? And it's constantly in our awareness, but we've been quite busy with a lot of things these days as well. So,
but they changed already a lot, because Food Wallet was in the beginning, the what was it
organic
again?
initiatives around us, like shops and restaurants. But then the restaurants got closed. It's like, what do we do with it, with this app, you know? And it was very local, so we put in the ones we knew and friends we had, but then there was no information of other regions, because the world is such a big place. So then even with the Food Wallet now, I mean, if you have some vegetables left over, but you live in the other side of the country, you're not going to email them. You mail them, you know. So this is also a thing that's logistically we were thinking about. And then the app had also limitations, because it was not developed like purely with code by a developer. It was another system that's easier to set up, but it's also limited. So there's things, what are we going to do then? So it's also not something we can do by ourselves. So we know that when the time is there, when it will grow, and when the growth is coming, we probably need something else to be able to help that growth. So
we might need a developer to look with us how to do it there. And then even what would be wonderful for us, or how we see it, is that existent communities can use the technology, because then you already have people who live together, and it's so easy, because you can just take a little picture of your food, and then you can put online what you have, and then you can have a list in your area on a map, and you can just see, oh, I can find fruit there, veggies there, even seeds. And we wanted to even expand it with work on the land, like people who have a plot of land, that they can ask people to work with them, or even
make it available, for growing.
Or making it available as a shareholding, let's say. So there are still possibilities to develop more.
And then even the weaknesses of the limitations of the app become its strength, because then because it's such an easy technology, we can just give it for everyone that has their own community, and they can run it themselves. So this is something that we're looking into, but right now the need's not been there yet. So, but we're ready. If it comes, we'll be ready, you know.
And with SkillSwap, we had this beautiful idea, like how we changed from working in a structured organization, you know, with the money system, and then being transformed and learned how to work by donation. That this is some kind of playground, so people can exchange, but most of all rehearse a new way of exchanging together, and to see how it works, because in the beginning a lot of emotions can come up inside of your system. I hear sometimes people write me and they say, I tried it, but it's not working, or I did a session and I got 10 years and I feel so awful. Why should I keep going? Or it's more like when you have a playground, when you have like-minded people and they're all like, hey, I want to offer my services by donation or on appreciation base, then you can check for yourself if you want to do a minimum or you want to work by crypto or money or whatever. And then it's between you and the party that connects with you. You just look at the service, you know, this is someone with the same frequency because they want to offer their things on donation base, which kind of already gives a good feeling because, you know, it's a different way of exchange. But then it's between you and the other one to sort out how you can make this agreement work. And maybe the first time it doesn't feel good, and then the second time you feel like, oh fuck, you know, I feel not good again. But so it's kind of this playground or this school, let's say, to learn how to be more comfortable with it. And with people who are on the same wavelength, it's easier to say, ah shit, I feel awful, or, you know, it's not really working for me. Than with complete strangers, it's a completely different story as well. So yeah, we're still excited about this too. And we even thought about the third one, which is more about housing, so that people can find a roof or a place where they can put their tent or whatever. And especially for times that come up, we think, I mean, we all know that it's just the beginning and things will be much worse, much more exciting as well, but much worse than what we have now.
And we'll need to find new ways. So even of be daring to put requests out instead of offering, because if you have a request that's something very practical, I mean, like cutting the trees or something like that, no one's going to put that skill on there as something they know they can do, because there's so many things you can do. But if you see a request that says, I need this and this skill, then other people can see it and see, okay, but I can mow the grass. It's no problem. And you can come. So in this way, both the offers and requests, I think there's a whole thing to discover for us as a community about needs and even things to borrow. That this can be very important as well for working in the garden. Many times I felt like, oh, I need this, or maybe and someone else that would have it. So technology is a great way to make the offers and the needs and bring them together.
Yeah, especially when you need basic things, because then you need someone who can chop wood, or someone who know how to make bread, or someone who knows how to make clothes. So it's a different way of thinking and exchanging then in that very moment when your basic needs are changing as well.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I know that one of the things we had talked about back when we were talking about the different networks was about exchanging things like building materials, or I'm thinking about, like, I've been reaching out on, there's this initiative called Buy Nothing, you know, and it's kind of an exchange initiative. And I don't know if it's global or if it's just in places in the United States, but basically people will give, you know, so I put out, does anyone have any children's books for kids ages 5 to 10? Because I'm wanting to like build up a library for Sophia, you know, so there's all these, and those are donations basically at this point. But so with Skill Swap, you can also exchange things. Is that true? Yeah, that's great, you guys.
Well,
we didn't put it in there.
We didn't put it in there, but I think it's possible. We could do it, huh?
Yeah, I don't know if the question is there.
That's how we work, huh? When there's a question, we provide an answer in some kind of way. Is that a question, Teresa?
I have lots of ideas to follow up on.
Yeah, I remember us being very excited about even sharing skills, not just skills, but knowledge as well. We talked about setting up a library of things that's still very much what we're excited about. So to provide just simple knowledge about how to do things, or many topics that we're excited about. But I mean, we feel it's still not time that everyone just sends us all this stuff that they're excited about. And we started a platform and especially to share this knowledge, but it's still a bit waiting also.
Yeah, it feels like people wait because there's no necessity at the moment.
Yes.
And I mean, then you have a nice social chat, or you can inspire one another with a question and an answer, but it's not really very practical in a way like, hey guys, I really need this. And then, oh, but I know this, or here you can buy it. Or so slowly we're building the library, but we have been so busy with the move that comes up now as well. And, you know, leaving the community and
we
lots
feel
of
that
other things.
The solid knowledge comes from experience. So we can gather YouTube videos, but it's different if you, like, there are a few topics that we know really more about than other things that we really feel we have experience with. So that's what we would gather, like, from different people that are really experienced in things.
For example, we met a man, and they live in a little house, and he changed all his devices on a different voltage or wattage. I don't know how you say
to
it.
12 volts.
Yes, so you can use just solar panels, and you can work with much more machines to make it happen. So we were very much interested to maybe go to his house and make a little video about, because it's so practical. How do you do this? And if you have no understanding about electricity at all, how can I just see how he did it and I can do it myself? These kind of things are so valuable.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys are ready. You're ready for the times that are coming.
Well, we just moved to a different country and we don't even speak the language. So.
Yeah. Let alone living off grid and finding a place where it will not flood and where the ground is not too dry, not too wet for growing vegetables. We don't know nothing on.
Yeah, I know we want to ask you about community. Did you want to?
Yeah, well, just while we're on the topic, someone's posting a question. Can you say what the website is named and what the name of the app is? I joined the community but lost somewhere the mail in which you told the app. I'm from the Netherlands.
Well, the name of the website, I want to say naam. Well, we speak Dutch, of course, too. The name of the website is inlinewithnature.org. And you can find the apps under technology, I think. So we have SkillSwap and Food Wallet, which are on there as well.
Okay.
So community.
Yeah,
So we had three major topics we wanted to talk to you guys about. One was kind of purification and nature. Second one was donation and appreciation. And this one would be community. And so, we're in a, in our phase of development with that and kind of moving into something that feels like there will be some very direct involvement with other people. That's exciting. And we know that in your cases, you've been through something very much like that. So maybe as a way of starting, just share a little bit about kind of how this all happened. And I know there's some special circumstances around the place you've been in, and you've hinted at certain aspects of that. Maybe you could talk about how that kind of came to be. And then like, what were your experiences being with other people in this place? And like, what did you learn? What were some takeaways, if you will, if we're writing the knowledge article for the website about how to be in community with other people, what would be like the points that you would want to make?
That's a good question. Yeah.
Well, I'm not even sure if we know after Jacqueline's event from yesterday.
Yes, right.
Also, this happened in a very organic way, I believe, because I had no intention at all to live in a community, to be very honest. So it was not that there was a desire or kind of, I want to be part of a community. Not at all. I like to be by myself or just with the two of us, but it was different for you.
Yeah, I had more experience with that as well, and I usually thrive in that, but I've come to really appreciate us living together with the two of us. Maybe we'll do that in Spain for a while again.
Well, actually, for us, it's not even about community in a way, but it's about the journey that is happening while you are in community. And we had the decision, so we found a house. We thought we were never be able to afford it because we had no money at all. And then the next step was that we came to look at the house, and then someone said, hey, this is so beautiful. I really want you to move in here, and I want to live with you guys, and I want to give you the warranty as a kind of a loan. So suddenly it was like, oh, this is possible. Okay, that's interesting. So it was like one step behind the other, and we came to this house, which is it's not a house that we would have chosen by ourselves. It's kind of poshy when you look at it from the outside, but it had 2 hectares of ground. There was a possibility of growing vegetables. It was big enough to live with people. And we had this idea like, okay, if we share a house, so because we choose for a community with sharing one house, which is different than when you have different properties. And we had this feeling like, hey, we can do this. We can make this happen, and there's enough space for a couple of people to live together. And then, we went through this year of so many things. So many things about. I think we learned a lot about ourselves. also about other people, but where we're still judging, where we're still expecting, where we're sometimes being taken over by patterns which are not easy to look at. Also the dynamics between us as a couple. And then you have other people living with you and they're part of this interaction. It's very awkward.
And you've not been clear from the beginning, because clarity comes along the way, and you feel like, okay, this is what we want, but then what do you do? Do you dare to communicate that? And so it's, okay, next time we'll do it differently,
You really learn to stay true to yourself, to not compromise with yourself anymore, to communicate or try to communicate in a different way, because then you realize you're not used to communicate for more people. You're just used to communicate with one person. And, in relationships, sometimes it's even difficult. So suddenly you're in a dynamic of multiple people together. And then it's like, different people react in different ways. And we were very lucky. We were with all people who are in the purification space. So that was beautiful because, well, most of these people are really knowing that what comes up also when it looks very ugly, that it's part of the purification process, and that what is true in that moment, maybe 2 weeks later, it's non-existent anymore. So it always brings you back together in a way which is kind of beyond words. Also, when you sometimes, like what we experienced in our relationship, have this feeling of, ooh, this looks not okay anymore. But then after a couple of weeks, and people just change and they're not people anymore who they were before, because the pattern has dissolved or something shifted inside of you, and then you can reconnect. And sometimes it's just time for someone to go, and they don't feel like it, or that was what Jacqueline was sharing yesterday as well. And it's difficult because some people feel it in this way, some people feel it in that way, and also as a group, like children, no children, kind of. And we decided to be the guardians in a way of this house, but it also brought us a lot of responsibility, because in the end we were the ones paying all the bills and being sure that everything was taken care of. And we even found a company who was providing us with biological organic food every week, so we didn't have to go to the shop and wear mouth masks. We felt, or we built a connection and a network around this. But still, what was I going to say? I lost my thread right now. Yes, the responsibility. And I think, when I'm very honest, I kind of underestimated that. And it brought me to a place where I felt very much under pressure. And I lost some part of myself, which was very creative and joyful. And because suddenly you're doing all the practical things. And now I see that it's very important for people to have the possibility to live how they really want and in their own way, because we all have different kind of habits and things going on. And it's easier when you all have your separate units. And even in the garden, as Matthias said, even when there's vegetables in the garden, we so have this kind of habit to go to the shop and buy our little things we love so much, instead of going to the garden and picking what is there. Oh, but it's only courgette, zucchini and cucumbers. Well, then it's zucchini and cucumber, and maybe you need to eat it for 1 or 2 weeks, but that's what nature provides. So we realized how far people are removed from living together, feeding themselves by the garden, being okay with what is provided and nothing more. So, it was so worth of going through this experience, because without it, we didn't have the information that we have right now. And we really created beautiful bonds with people as well. I think, the group we are with now, we are leaving in a week, and now everyone is like, oh, this will be, strange for us to live by ourselves again and to leave each other. And we cannot kind of have an image how it will be for each one of us, but we will keep our little group and connect regularly and then see how it develops. So there's a lot of gratitude. Even now we have sometimes conversations to speak about it, and also how to end this in a beautiful way. Like yesterday, we helped one of the inhabitants with her move. So we were, loading in the truck. And so these kind of things are very nice.
I don't think you're even aware of what happens on a purification level by being together. I mean, so much things that just fall away and that you don't even notice until later.
Yeah. And I believe when things are more clear, because everyone that comes in a community brings in their patterns, and it has an influence on the whole community. It always happens like that, and it will play itself out. And now I see that when you have to be responsible for yourself, you have to take care of your own piece of land. But then out of that responsibility for yourself, maybe can grow togetherness in a vegetable garden, or, or to have dinner together once a week or whatever. So you have, for now, these moments or being with yourself, and then the moments of togetherness, which are more chosen. That's, for me, a perfect combination for me personally, of course, because it's different for everyone, how I think we would like to proceed if we want to choose for community again.
Yeah, I think we misinterpret that in the beginning a little bit, because we felt, everyone having their own responsibility and their sense of ownership is very important. We so clearly see that now. But in the beginning, we thought we don't want to push people to work in the garden. So we want everyone to have their own space, and we will separate the organization and with the living situation. And then along the way, we felt like it's actually not possible, because this organization is about being closer to nature or grow our own food or all these aspects. But then if you live here, you cannot say, I'm totally not part of that. It's just impossible, because it is part of life. It's part of our life. So
and then you see the other side of the coin being flipped, and I became this control freak, was like, come on, we all need to work together.
Yeah, we were quite idealistic about it and thought everyone would have the same kind of desire to do that, but it's obviously ours, so we should have had that in our little bubble. But it's, if you live in the same house and work and in the same garden and all have the same, all the bills are on one pile, it's quite hard, even though you think idealistically we could save so many costs if we do this, but it's still not easy to do that, huh? So yeah, I don't know how about your guys' experiences or will be, but I'm very curious what you guys will learn through this process.
Yeah.
I'm interested to just get a little specific with you if you can. Just it gives us a doorway into kind of a deeper understanding of your experience. But one thing we took away from a recent experience, or I took away rather, was I want to live in community. I want people in my midst, but I don't want people in my house either. You have your house.
We have the same now.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, was there anything really specific around just your own patterns and seeing them, and then recognizing, if we do this again, I would make this clearer. I would structure this differently. I would do that a little differently. Tell us about anything like that come to mind.
Well, the biggest thing is we wouldn't live in the same house. So that's what we would structurally do differently.
You guys would be great for our thing.
Yes.
Well,
also, contracts are, I've learned a lot about the law in general. You think that a contract is there to protect you, and that it's safe, because we started, we had a huge rental amount to pay every month. And then, you start a little bit fear-based, we were okay with our own life, but now suddenly there's much more and much more money is involved. And it's like you go through the same process, but on a different layer now. Yeah. Because, when there's much more money involved, the risk is in your mind higher than it was before, when you still had everything under control. So what I notice is that out of this feeling, suddenly you make compromises with people, for example, who start to live with you, and sometimes you even know a little bit in advance that it's not 100%, but maybe a 95%. And you're very enthusiastic because, of course, you need the money, and the 95 is great, right? But it isn't. You really need to be honest with yourself and also with the other one, because, it turns out always, and it explodes always, and it shows you that your gut feeling was right, but your action is based on fear or worriness or whatever that is still inside of your system. So I think I learned a lot to not compromise anymore. And when when you're a little bit too much over the top, then suddenly you need to take your power back. And then you need to make a huge decision or a huge action, which can then seem for other people like, what the fuck is happening here? Because they don't understand. But it's good for everyone involved, because you're not true to yourself anymore in that very moment. So it's always kind of a training how to be more yourself. How can you be more true to yourself? How can you only do what feels right for you, and then trust that what is right for you when it comes from the right space will be good for everyone who is involved. And sometimes I even saw myself moving into someone else's pattern, and then because it was still in my system too, and cheering like, yeah, it's good. It was not good at all. It was abuse, but and you can see it afterwards, and then you're like, oh fuck, what have I done? And then 2 months later you say, oh no, I will not do this again, because suddenly there's a clearing and you understand what was going on at that very moment. But in the moment itself, you cannot. You just need to go through it.
Well, you step in at a certain moment, you are where you are, and then you attract people that are linked to that, and that's when you learn, and then you will do it differently. So it's not even that you can give advice now, I would never do this or never do that, because we really felt it was a good decision at the time, and we had to go through it in some way, because otherwise, I don't know what we have done, but it still felt like decisions we could make at that moment that were good, and we would make different now. So that's, in the meantime, so many things fall away and happen that you just wouldn't make the same decisions anymore, or tolerate the same kind of things, that you feel, no, I don't, that's a no, I don't want to consent.
I'm just going to put on a little bit more light. I have one very interesting thing as well.
Oh yeah.
Me personally, I learned a lot about abuse, and kind of, for me, my childhood was always normal because I didn't know anything else. And in my family system, there's a lot around abuse, but when it's normal, you cannot see that anymore. It's very strange. And we went through a couple of experiences, and I really could feel in my system. It was so funny. It was like I was a child again, but now I could feel which effect it had on my body. And it was so strong that I needed to stay in my room even for almost a week. I mean, it was crazy. I was like, what the fuck is going on here? Sorry for my language. And it's like what you could not feel as a child because it was harmful, but there was this layer of protection now was able to be felt. And through that, it could be transmuted as well after a while. So it's interesting to see how when you bring people together, you bring this mixture of people who also help you to purify these very, very strong patterns which are still in your system. And it's never how it looks like on the outside, but it's more what is needed to be brought up by a reflection of someone else, and then it can be transformed. So sometimes it's very... I mean, we had moments where you thought, oh, really? Do we still want this? Do you want to keep going? But then a week later, you see the beautiful gift you received and how much lighter you have become. And then you know, okay, we still need to keep going. So that's the mantra. Just, keep going all the time. That's one of our main, things that drive us. No matter how it looks like, just keep going and see what happens.
And seeing that the process is more important than all of the frustrations and things that don't go with your expectations. And just see that you become happier and lighter and clearer over time, and that's the goal. That's what's most important. I do know that in the process, we in our attempt to do it right, we even made it worse by coming together even like every day and sharing about practical things and about our emotions. But every time it's like an opportunity for all these patterns to come up and even be stirred up, you know. So it was good for us to see that we needed to take responsibility to make the decisions in the end, but also to give people space just for living instead of trying to build community, which is the worst thing there is.
That's again the control. You want to let's build a community, or do it in a way that everyone else is talking about, like having rules and having this and having that. It's kind of creating a beautiful structure. And we had some kind of structure, like everyone was cooking 1 day a week. And then we had lunch together, and then we had a role in the dishwashing as well. And I mean, the house was always clean. It was always, I mean, these kind of things were always respected. And that's beautiful that you can live in this way. But that was the more practical structure, let's say. And then it's kind of how far do you go in the rest of the control? And to be very honest, at one point I went over the top in the control, because you think you're responsible and you need to control everything. And then you change again, and it's like, oh, okay, I can lay back again and see what happens now. And then you realize, like, the more you work in the garden and you see how nature is like I'm not doing what nature does. Maybe I need to back off a little bit and see what happens then. So again, action in line with nature and changing your action all the time when you're confronted with something.
But the result is that it doesn't always look perfect, intended, just like our garden. It's a bit wild, but there is fruit. After a time. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we probably want to begin to wrap up and maybe talk a little bit about what's next for you guys. But just to those listening, if you have questions that you want us to propose here, feel free to type those into the chat. We have a question sent ahead of time, which we can cover too. But now, if you're watching live, this is the moment to type your question for Evi and Matthias into the chat.
We have one here we could read. It says, so beautiful to hear about your journeys in the purification space. Question, do you have anything to share for those of us with partners not interested in purification? It can be tough.
I almost want to say there's plenty of people who are in that situation. We might be the last people to know because we're not in that circumstance.
I have no idea. I only have the father of my children who is, well, I put him in the purification space, but he's not. And it's very difficult sometimes. Difficult to explain, or I mean, he's a lovely, lovely, lovely man, and I still love him very much for who he is, but it's kind of, you cannot connect in some kind of way, but it's so different for everyone. It really depends on your personal situation, and I don't think anyone can give advice on that.
Yeah. One word that comes to mind is transparency, just to be super transparent about what I'm experiencing, what I'm learning, what I'm receiving, what I'm hearing, and really not censor myself and just let that become either an invitation for this other individual to maybe be drawn into that same bandwidth of energy or not. But I would think I would feel, for me, and this is one of my patterns, I would kind of naturally start to censor myself and silence myself and not talk about certain things. And that doesn't feel right. I think I would really want to encourage transparency.
Yeah, by being yourself, you help them have a purification anyway, and you can't always put them in the purification space. I have my mom in there, our daughter.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, the question we got ahead of time, I'm pretty sure you've already answered without us asking it directly, but I will ask it directly, which was, did you use organic seeds in your garden, and did you follow the technique of planting seeds as used in the Anastasia books?
I never read Anastasia books, to be honest, but yes, we used organic seeds. It was one of the important things that I felt.
Hybrid seeds as well, just seeds that could give seeds that you could use. I don't know the term of it, but
yeah, it's called zaadvast in Dutch. It's like the seed keeps its strength, and when you get new seeds from it, then the same quality of food is provided. Mm-hmm. And I don't know anything about the planting techniques of Anastasia, so no, we didn't.
It involves, among other things, it involves putting the seeds in your mouth so that the plant grows specifically for you. There's a few other things about it. That's the one thing I know about it.
You never tried that, I think.
No, I never tried that. No, we ate the seeds, so some pumpkin seeds and so, but we never tried to put it in the mouth. But it's a good tip. Maybe I can do that.
But with so many seeds, it's hard to put them all in your mouth, I think.
Or when they're really tiny, like Sophia and I tried to do with lettuce seeds, and I mean, they were all just stuck to our tongues, and but I think if you have that love and connection with your garden, they're probably growing for you anyway, just based on that bond of affection. So
the same love for the wind as well is maybe important.
Yeah, and that brings us also to our next next steps, let's say, because we're going to Spain now. It's another jump into the unknown. Another thing that arose only a couple of weeks ago, actually, because we thought we would stay here, and then suddenly there was this knowing, no, we will not. And then Spain came in the picture, and then it turned to be exactly what was needed, because someone in the community just bought her own place, and she was communicating that to us just 1 or 2 days before. And then, other things happened, and it just, it feels as it should be. So it's beautiful. But now there's a deep longing of connecting more with raw nature, with rural nature, because here we had a beautiful garden, but it was still a little bit licked, let's say, there was grass, and so we were not able to do what we really wanted to do. And we want to focus on new ways of growing in different ways of what is possible there. So there's now more and more this deep inner feeling of connecting with a plot of land where all the love that is inside there and all the enthusiasm and the care can be put into a plot for ourselves and for many, many other people too. And Spain feels like the perfect place to do that, but we don't know where we will end up. We have no idea. And in these times, to just go somewhere and to see what happens, it's exciting, but a little bit like, ooh, okay, are we really going to do this? Yes, okay, let's see.
That's very exciting, guys. When do you leave?
Next week.
And where do you go?
Ibiza.
Well, we feel we want to go up in the mountains a little bit. So we heard that there's a nice spot somewhere in Murcia where the land is very dry, but it's not always what the mind wants, because my mind is like, green fields and very fertile soil, but the feeling now goes a little bit more to Murcia and the mountains there around. In the beginning we thought Alicante, so it's just above Murcia, so it's kind of the east coast side, but a little bit more into the mountains. So we would love to find a property somewhere at 700 or 900 meters, and then see what wants to develop. We had many people asking, can we join? Are you going to build a community there as well? And let us know. So we made a Telegram channel for In Line with Nature, where we'll post videos so people can catch up with us. But we have no idea. Well, maybe it will be something for more people, something with more space, but we'll see as it goes. So we don't have an intention to build a community now, but we wait a little bit, and it's more like we know when it needs to be like that the community will just come to us. And that feels much more organic and much better.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you guys so much. Wow, we really talked for a long time. Thank you so much for everything you brought to this, your energy and your honesty, and just bringing your full selves. It's really, really, as always, really delightful to talk with you both.
Yeah, thank you both. Really enjoyed it. And if we don't speak again before you go, we'll be very interested to hear kind of what transpires for you in Spain. That sounds very interesting.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, thank you very much for having us. It was really a delight, our first interview ever. So we were a little bit, I was a little bit nervous. You were okay with it.
You seem very much coming from that calm-centered space.
Totally fine.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
You.
Okay, we're not live anymore.